Our topic today is Become Immutable to Cyber Attacks and Ransomware. In our digital age, data has taken on an immense value because without it, an organization simply can't function. The cost of a cyber attack or ransomware attack is so great that mitigating that risk with a solution that can repel attacks, all while consolidating data and reducing costs and providing a modern, elegant approach to unstructured data makes sense every way you look at it. Today, we'll discuss how you can recover from ransomware and other cyber attacks using decentralized and immutable journal backups with Storj and Zerto. We have two presenters for you today. Let me just switch my screen. I'll do it. There we go. We have two presenters today leading this discussion. We've got Dan Willoughby, developer advocate here at Storj, along with Anthony Dutra, who is the technical marketing engineer for Zerto. They will both walk you through the following: ransomware protection, unplanned disruptions, cloud complexity, how Storj works differently to counter all three, Storj and Zerto connects easily using S3 compatibility, and how Zerto LTR and Storj DCS fight ransomware. So without further ado, I just want to go through a couple house rules. We ask that you please remain on mute so we do not disturb the speakers or attendees with any outside noise. And questions are welcome, and they will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our very own Heather Vescent will be monitoring those questions. So feel free to type in your questions using that Q&A section at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And our team will be monitoring those. And also at the end of the presentation, you also have the option, we'll open the floor. So you can just raise your hand, just select raise hand in the webinar controls at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to answer your question that way. Just be sure to unmute yourself when we call on you. And due to time, if we're unable to answer these questions or all of them, we'll answer them in a post blog, and we'll upload that to our forum community, and we'll also include that on a post email to you. So let's get started. Anthony, floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you everyone, as well as to the Storj team, for inviting me to this Let's Talk conversation. We wanted to start off this presentation. Dan and I were kind of going through building this deck together. And one of the slides that came out to us and what we see a lot at Zerto are these top customer challenges. And when we're kind of drafting up how we can work better together in order to fight this threat, these are the three things that we kept coming back to and being like, hey, this is the impact that this technology, when merged together, can make. So the number I want to call out right immediately on this slide is 265 billion. Now, let that sink in for a second, because by 2031, that is going to be the absolute cost of every sort of ransomware threats and attacks that are happening within our IT organizations today. So a business is going to potentially lose a lot of revenue from this type of unplanned disruption. And there needs to be some sort of way to help combat this in a structured way, a secure way, and most efficient way. So obviously ransomware exploding in the next coming years. We're seeing that just regular outages and disruptions are another problem. Over half of organizations today suffer from some sort of disruption. And the cloud field out there is pretty complex and sort of a muddy area when you are looking for solutions to adopt that new cloud strategy. So what we found is customers, particularly within the ransomware space, are looking for a way to protect their data, protect their applications. And this is really where we play nicely together. And Dan, I think really this idea of 24/7, no time and no data loss is very possible with our two technologies merged together because of that belief in data security, which I believe Storj is very much, if we're going to think about that, about.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. I am so stoked that you're here with us today. Anthony has an amazing offer at the end of this webinar, and so you want to make sure to stick around to get that. But today I wanted to walk you through a framework of how I have thought about data security. And so I've been a software engineer for 10 years, and I've worked in data storage specifically for 6 of those years. And so if we can go to the next slide, let's unroll this framework. So what I call it is the 3 R's of data security. So at the top there is the read. And what you want to be conscious of is who can view your data. And there are either employees in your business, or there's partners that you share your data with. In the software world, we call it the concept. We have a concept called least privileged, which means that you only grant access to those who absolutely need it. I kind of think of like that in the CIA, it's like the need to know concept, right? If no one needs to have your financial data, they shouldn't have access to it. All right, next slide. The next pillar here and is recover. So we're not the unfortunate part of our data is that it has interaction with human beings, right? And so we're not immune to mistakes, and we're also easily like countered with ransomware. So there's this need to be able to go back in time, and this is where like your RPO or RTO, recovery point objective, recovery time objective. After we realize that mistake, we need to be able to come back online in a quick and efficient manner. There's this story of a developer that I worked with. He was running a test, and what the test would do is it would set up the database, and then it would add some test data, and at the end of the test, it would wipe it all so that the next test could be ran. And on a particular day, this developer had connected to the production database and ran some queries there, but then later came back from lunch and he ran this test. And what it did is the connection to that production database to remain intact, and all of our production data was wiped. And that caused some downtime for our business. But luckily, we had our backups, so we were able to recover in a certain amount of time. So that segues into my last pillar there. If we can do the next slide, is reach. If you have downtime in your business, it can be costly. And so there's an article from Atlassian that says in 2015, Apple had a 12-hour outage that cost them $25 million. And just a year later, Delta had 2,000 canceled flights and a cost of $150 million from just a short 5-hour outage. And in 2019, we may all remember when Facebook went down for 14 hours, and the estimated cost of that was 90 million. So you need to make sure that you select a provider that is globally available and reachable. And then if we could go to the next slide. I think fundamentally here, though, is you only want you or me as a business owner, infrastructure person to reach, read, and recover that data. And so let's segue now to how Storj builds 2 of these pillars, and then I'll turn it back over to Anthony to go over that recovery. So next slide. So at the top of the pillar, we offer end-to-end encryption. So from the very foundations of Storj, we built in this concept of when the data leaves your machine, it is encrypted, and it can only be read when it comes back. There's some like certain things that made our product hard to use because we can't offer, like, say, if you forget your password, we can't recover that. It's fundamental to the client to be able to only read the data. And then with Reach, we have approximately 15,000 nodes across the globe to where we can put any object that comes into our network is globally distributed. So we'll go a little bit more in depth in that a little bit later. And then recover, we offer immutable backups so that when your data comes in, and Anthony's can touch on this a lot, is you can't delete it, and it is there when you need it. And that, I think, is one of the fundamental protections against ransomware, is that it is literally impossible to delete these backups.
Right.
All right, next slide. So why is Storj different? How is it countering these things? Well, there's this concept of in traditional data centers that they have this strong perimeter, right? Outside of the data center, it's hard to get in. You may have like a keypad to get inside there. And employees, once they're inside, they have free reign over your data. So at Storj, we took a different approach. We have people join our network with unutilized disk space. It may be a Raspberry Pi or like a hard drive that they have on their server. And once they join the network, we are able to utilize that space. And so from the very foundations of the company, if this security isn't correct, then we are not in good shape, right? So in the traditional data center, they may take shortcuts because they believe their perimeter is strong enough. But once someone gets inside, they have free reign. And I think top of mind for all of us is how Uber just last week was infiltrated by an attacker, and they were basically taunting them on Twitter saying, hey, here's all of your financial data. They even got in their Slack and said like, hey, we're in your Slack, we're an attacker. And so having that end-to-end encryption is fundamental to making sure your data is secure regardless of where it is.
And just real quick, Dan, I just have like a question just from my from the audience members that will kind of join from the Zerto side. What's great about Storj, and I know I wrote about this originally, it uses blockchain as a hash table, right, for that distributed storage to really take place. Is that what's kind of underlying a lot of this, or what?
Yeah, so the underlying technology isn't blockchain in particular, but it's
Right.
structured very much like it.
Right.
And
Like
so
distributed
that's
hash
how the we're able to have participants in our network that we don't know that may just be, it could be you, Anthony. You have a hard drive in your closet, but that encryption is based on that blockchain to where it is safe and durable regardless of where it is.
Right. And that's the redundancy within the software. It's absolutely awesome. So, and I think a great use case for things like backup and alternatives. So
yeah, absolutely. And going back to that triangle, right? You want to be able to make sure you're the only one who can read it.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you can reach it. And with our global network of nodes, that is possible.
Cool.
All right, next slide. All right, so we touched on this a little bit, but like the state of the cloud today is single data centers across the whole world, right? There may be Amazon in Virginia and Oregon or in Europe, and there's only a few corporations that own this. Those data centers are targeted for attacks. Once they get in there, they can access that data. And not only that, the hardware churn is costly to the environment. So let's go to the next slide. Oh yeah, those are the things I went through.
Right.
And so this is why Storj is different and handles it in a different way. Every object is split into about approximately 80 pieces across the world, and we only need 29 of those back to reconstitute your file. So whether your data needs to be accessible in Europe, it takes the fastest peers in that geography and restores it there, or in North America, it'll be fast there. And we monetize that spare capacity. We're often called the Airbnb of hard drives. And what it does is offer better security pricing and performance for you, and it makes sure that your data is secure. So let's go next slide. What gets me really excited is, and why Anthony is here, is that we have an S3 compatibility layer that makes it work seamlessly with Zerto. And with Zerto, you can achieve that final pillar of the 3 R's of data security, making sure your data is recoverable.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
So Anthony, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, let's kick it over to what Zerto is. So that was great because it also gives me an understanding of how, like, what Storj is, the value of it from even the cloud complexity perspective that we pointed out before, and obviously the inherent end-to-end encryption, things like immutability, that distributed sort of, decentralized sort of feel that I get to it. is big when it comes to fighting ransomware and having that extra layer of security. So that's what I'd like to go to. Please, next slide, please, about Zerto overall. So within these next few slides, I'm going to just cover what Zerto's bread and butter is, and that is what you see on screen, continuous data protection. We are about near synchronous replication, journaling, some topics that I'll touch on very high level in the coming slides, but where both Storj and Zerto play a really good have a really good story together is with the long-term retention capability. And you can see a little sneak preview there, but that's the Zerto GUI. Everything that you'll see from a disaster recovery setup to storage, and actually doing the retention process and writing the replicas to the S3 repository that they are, is all done through that GUI and the long-term retention part. So next slide. What does Zerto do very well? And again, that is to say continuous data protection, basically with three technologies or three basically secret sauces behind what makes Zerto Zerto. We answer the call to these three problems that we discussed in the beginning. We're able to bring an application back online within seconds to minutes before after a ransomware attack actually happened, or an unplanned disruption actually happened. And we're able to do so with very, very granular RPOs that I mentioned before, and RTOs as well. So you're quickly able to come back online, not having to pay a ransom, getting out of jail pretty much, and you're able to get your business up and running as fast as possible. And then it's also done, like you could see, just the S3 compatibility that we have with our on-prem solution is done with other solutions that allow for cross-cloud, multiple cloud capabilities within each. But continuous data protection is the underpinning of this. That ability to recover is orchestrated and automated and given some level of analytics. And really the three things that underpin this CDP, you can go to the next slide, is what we'll get into a second. So just to recap what Zerto can do, again, fighting this ransomware from a CDP and LTR standpoint, is we offer this continuous data protection really no matter where your applications live. You're able to recover from a ransomware attack within seconds before it happened, and we'll show you why it's more of an application-centric approach compared to where you might see differences in like a backup. So let's go, so click again, and then let's go into what Zerto is at a little bit more deeper level. So next slide. So the first thing that Zerto is, what enables this continuous data protection that we saw before, is the fact that we do near synchronous replication. So we're not doing snapshots. We're not taking point in time necessarily of everything going on in your environment. We're using our ability to replicate and roll back very granularly to support your operations in case something does happen. It's a software-only solution. So again, you're not having to buy a large server that supports software on top of it to do these sort of processes. It's all done on the hypervisor if you're on-prem, or natively with some of our cloud solutions or Kubernetes-based solutions. So you're always on and you're always protected with this near synchronous replication. We're able to do near synchronous replication, next slide, mainly due to our proprietary thing right here, which is what we call the journal. And the journal is basically tracking changes within those apps, and we're taking those deltas and sending those across the wire, or if you're replicating locally, to give you that ability, like a DVR-like rollback. So let's say something happens at 10 o'clock, I can roll back to 9:55 before that happened, maybe to troubleshoot, see what the heck actually went wrong, compared to if you were to have something maybe more traditional 4 hours ago or a couple of days ago to come back online too. So this continuous data protection, with this journal, the journal is what allows it. And next slide. And we're able to take the virtualized infrastructure that you have, like a VM, and really make it focused around the app itself. So an application today, whether it's in Kubernetes or in a virtualized infrastructure, is not just one application. You might have a database app, you might have a front end app. So these all are different. And what Zerto allows you to do is basically logically group those together to roll them back to that point in time that is very granular, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So this obviously gets the full app online compared to just individual pieces of it. So Dan, I think you came off there. I think.
Yeah, right here. I'm thinking back to when that database, was wiped. Had we had Zerto, we could have recovered to like literally any minute, because that is always, it's not like syncing every hour getting a backup. It's continuously putting it in there, and I think that's awesome.
Awesome. No, thank you, man. And what's super cool is then we also, if you go to the next slide, and where Storj and we play together, is that ability to send immutable copies, or you're continuously replicating on-prem to a secondary site, but hey, we want this gold point in time to send it up to a repository that we know is going to be immutable, encrypted, and obviously there's a lot of copies of it. And this is our long-term retention capability. So we like to say that this is a nice layer on top of CDP that through these next architecture slides, I'll show you why we work very nice together. But why we're here today, right? Everything on premise, operationally, come back online. If you're looking to get a gold copy, we're sending it to Storj, so through S3. So next, please. Right, and this is how we're going about saying that we fight ransomware together. So next slide, we'll go into a very basic scenario that we see a lot of, doing that CDP on premise locally, keeping that application alive in case something goes down operationally, but then sending one of those point in time copies with LTR, through our scheduling to Storj for that immutable copy. This obviously allows us locally to recover back within seconds, but now we have that extra layer of protection offsite, 14,000 plus nodes. And it's just a bonus that it has all these extra layers of security, is simple to set up. And if you don't need to bring the data back down, it is a great sort of archiving solution to leave up in the cloud for a very cheap price. Next slide. This is just a sort of build slide into the next one. If you'd like more redundancy against ransomware attacks, replicate using Zerto at a secondary site. So next slide. And then what I would suggest is, if that site is up and is clean, right? Let's say something went down on your primary site, you're really taking advantage of CDP remotely. Hey, I'm coming back online to a point in time where we feel this is good. Then use LTR to send it to Storj to say, hey, this is the clean copy that we have validated is good. Let's use this as another point in time in the future for us to restore back to. So again, you're creating and sort of restoring from this safe site, and you're leveraging the long-term retention capabilities as well as CDP within Zerto to immutably and safely send your replica disks and the applications to Storj. And next slide. And this is just the redundancy of a good disaster recovery solution. And what I really like about this is you're using Zerto's LTR scheduling to send multiple copies of apps at different points in time to Storj itself. And again, it just gives you that extra layer of flexibility to come back online in case site A goes down and then you came back up on site B, but oh my God, something went wrong, we need another place to recover from. Having these golden copies consistently and stored within a trusted, globally distributed storage system is enormous for our journaling capability and just everything from a disaster recovery standpoint. Okay, so next slide there. Recovering from ransomware. So, all right, we've used Zerto LTR and stored up to Storj. What does the recovery process look like? What exactly am I recovering? Next slide. Basically, what this allows you to do, again, CDP on-prem allows you to roll back to a very specific point in time. If that wasn't affected, right, your whole data center wasn't affected locally, that could, be an issue. What we have here is basically that point in time copy of the journal, and all of the stuff that you said you want to push to Storj is brought back down. So this enables you to search for a specific file that you wanted to pull back and recall because let's say somebody deleted it 2 days, a week before, and you want to bring that solid copy that within that point in time back down. You can with this. Or you can also go to the full extent of an actual full virtual machine level restore. So really, depending on your need, you're restoring from a truly encrypted, immutable end-to-end copy of that file or file system. And next slide. Awesome. So I know that's kind of a lot being thrown at people. I think we are at about close to wrapping up this session. But in order to find out more, I always boast and am a enormous fanboy of our Zerto hands-on labs. This is kind of what got this started. Feel free to go to zerto.com/labs and sign up. Basically, this gives you access to a catalog of environments where you can use Zerto already pre-installed, already have environments set up on premise and in the public cloud to do this stuff to and test it with firsthand. And then, of course, we'll go into the integration doc. I think that's next slide. Yeah, that we've written together and take advantage of this too. So if you are I would imagine there are a lot of developers here today, but if you are on the infrastructure side or you're close to your infrastructure folk, and they want to use CDP as well as Storj for that LTR, Zerto is offering a free edition of our enterprise cloud licensing. That's 10 virtual machines to do that long-term retention CDP with. And it is valid for 1 year. So if you're just looking to test it out outside of the lab environment, here's a great way to get hands-on.
Yeah, and Anthony, I appreciate you bringing this offer here. And when it, you'll make sure you want to scan that code because you won't be able to find it later. But the cool thing about pairing Storj with Zerto is that you get this protection, and Storj has a free tier of up to 150 gigabytes, which can, in most cases, cover a lot of those VMs that you have.
Yeah, no, right, like a very important file server you got. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good potential using the two together. Thank you, Dan. Next slide. What do we got next? Questions.
Yeah, so do you have any questions at all, Heather, in our queue?
Yeah, hi. So we don't have any audience questions yet. So if you've got questions, just hit the Q&A button. However, I do have some questions that I can ask Dan and Anthony while we see if our audience has any. So this first question goes out to you, Anthony. Does Zerto only replace and recover virtual machines?
No, so Zerto does have other offerings. I would look at Zerto for Kubernetes. We basically take that same continuous data protection, but have expanded it into the Kubernetes domain. So if you're looking to replicate literally seconds from AKS to EKS, you can do so with your volume, persistent volumes, config maps. We do that in Kubernetes, and then we also have Zerto in cloud for AWS. Super cool to do that cross-region replication.
Great. Okay, we've got a question from Alec. If an attack takes control of a VM, would Zerto still be able to replace it to remove the hacker's control?
Yes, because you would be rolling back to a point in time, ideally before that hacker gained control and put whatever agent they had in there before that happened. And again, that's probably why you would want to use Zerto after having like an application stand up. This is the zenith of where we think this app is today. Send it off to Storj, and that's a great scenario to recover from. Good example.
Great. We've got another question from the audience from Pascal. Since whatever is stored on storage is undeletable, does that mean the continuous backup exponentially increases the storage footprint?
Right,
so
yeah.
if you,
Go ahead.
No, if you were to set immutability, right, then yeah, because what the point of that is to not overwrite what is in there. Zerto by default, if you don't do immutability, will overwrite in whatever you're saying there, but that would be for more of a storage thing. Like even if we do that, you still technically have those copies from before, right, Dan? Yeah,
so that immutability layer is important if, say, you never want it to be deleted, right? And so in a continuous backup with Zerto, that immutability may not make as much sense.
Yeah, so right. And again, we're not constantly, you would set the schedule as to when you would want to back this up, right? Send it to storage. The continuous data protection part is more operationally rolling back on-prem at a remote site. Not so much, hey, I need this gold copy kind of thing.
Great. So I've got like a little bit of a follow-up question from that. How does storage ensure the data is durable?
Okay, so storage, like I said, we have any object when put on the network, it's split into 80 pieces, and that is distributed across the world. We only need 29 of those to recover the file. And what we do is monitor the pieces of those files. And when we see that threshold going down, say to like 60, we would then repair that file, bring it back, and then redistribute it back so it's healthy at those 80 nodes.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And this was a follow-up from Pascal. He says, can you change the immutability status of a file?
I would say,
Yeah.
that's so when you connect Zerto to Storj, you give it an access token that only allows, like, deletes are disabled. So like Zerto wouldn't be able to delete those backups in Storj. I do believe, however, there is a way, if you have access to the storage buckets directly, that you could change the status of that.
Great. Okay. Next question is from Lewis, in the audience. How is Zerto handling the pricing when recovering from large files from storage?
Oh, no, egress fees and things of that nature. So yeah, that is definitely something to consider when moving stuff out. But I believe, Dan, I'm not going to say anything. It's less of a problem because of the scale, right? I believe the cost is significantly lower. Yeah.
So I can speak to that. With storage, we are up to 80% cheaper than AWS. So what that means is we charge $4 per terabyte for data at rest, and the egress is $7 per terabyte. And what you'll typically see on Amazon is the costs are $23 per terabyte for data at rest, and between $70 to $90 for that egress, which means when the data is coming out. And so you'll basically knock 10 off of your bill if you switch to storage.
Wow, that's a pretty big number, Dan. That can be. Here's another question I've got, I think for Anthony. How does long-term retention differ from backup?
Okay, yeah. So backup overall can be of a full environment and is not really more focused around, like when we use long-term retention, our big thing is to take an immutable copy of the journal itself and then everything that's with it. So you obviously would want Zerto, you need Zerto to come back online with that data. What is major difference is the fact that, the backup would usually require another piece of hardware, and really LTR is just a nice way to quickly archive or quickly make golden copies of apps rather than full environments, backups full environments.
Great. And we've got another question from the audience from Lewis. How is storage handling users' data when they stop paying for their data? Does it get deleted, or how long is it retained?
Yeah, great question there, Lewis. I don't know the specific retention time, but if that, just like any other business like Apple, if you stop paying for their cloud storage, they will eventually delete that data, right? The business isn't free, but at Storj we do have a generous free tier of 150 gigabytes that you can utilize and take advantage of.
Oh, great. I've got just a couple more questions. I think this is for you, Dan. How do I get started using the S3 compatibility layer?
Awesome. Yeah, this is catered towards those developers out there. If you go to docs.storj.io, we have a quick getting started guide with the AWS CLI, and it is as simple as changing that endpoint from AWS, pointing it to our servers, and you can use that AWS compatibility.
Great. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions. This is from the audience anonymously. What is the cost of the Zerto service that we would pay if we didn't get the free trail QR code?
That depends. Right. I would just call up the account executives. If you're worried about cost, thing that I would say is, what is the cost of your business being down, and compare that to the cost of what you would pay for a software that brings you back up online in seconds. Is 5 minutes of your web page being down thousands of dollars? A lot of businesses say yes. So honestly, I think it's the same car thing. If you call up your sales guy and you really, really need this, it's how much you got, not
Great. Okay, so we've got another one from the audience, from Rob. How about the case where our VMs are storing a lot of state in serverless databases? Maybe we'd want to protect those separately.
Yeah, that's a different solution. I think just in general, if you're looking at stateless applications, usually are run in Kubernetes clusters. So unless there's some persistent volumes that, let's say, like the front end would need, that's what you would really focus on protecting, outside the scope of this conversation, you could say.
Great, and we've got one more. Oh, sorry, Dan.
Yeah, and I think, Anthony, with those serverless, the whole idea of those is those can be spun up, execute the code, and then spun back down, right? So I don't think that really is as important there.
Great, and we'll close it out with one last question, which I'm actually very curious about. Do you think decentralization is coming to the data center?
It absolutely is coming to the data center. Decentralization, and I think the idea of Web3 is starting to, I think, just slowly creep into the enterprise space. It's not talked a lot about, like, the conventions and things that I would go to, but I just think it's a more efficient way of doing things. It's the software way of doing things. And I think hardware organizations need to be able to quickly adopt this trend in order to stay relevant and to stay competitive. So I definitely think decentralization is coming.
Great. Those are all for our Q&A today. So I'll just pass it back over to you, Heather.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We are at adjourn here. Just a few things. We are going to send a follow-up post email, and we'll make sure that all the links that are included from Zerto, along with that QR code, are embedded into that email, just to make sure everybody gets access to that. And then if you're interested in learning more, discovering more about Storj as well, you can always sign up at www.storj.io for a free account. Also, there's tons of things you can learn with our resources page, our forum. So be sure to check that out also through our main website. And then we've got a cool virtual lab that we do every month. And actually, Dan is here. This is Dan, who's on the webinar today, and he leads that. So all of those technical gurus, if you will, we welcome you all to join us. Our next one is next week on the 27th at noon Eastern time. And our next webinar for next month is going to be with an analyst with Forrester on decentralized storage, battle tested, enterprise approved. And we'll have some great guests that will be interviewed as well to kind of share their thoughts as to why decentralized cloud object storage with storage. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next month. And we'll send a post email. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you.